like I said, thank you, Laura Gamino from OU Health Trauma, going over a variety of different summer safety for us today. Thank you, and we look forward to what you have to share with us.
Thank you so much, Lindsay, and live well. I am very excited to be here today and talk to you all about issues that are near and dear to my heart, safety issues. And it really is all about summer safety, when we talk about heat stroke prevention, hydration, water safety, and sun safety. Just a note that, in case you don't know, with our trauma center here, one of the requirements of having that verification is injury prevention, and so that's why I have my job. I'm actually a public health nurse, so I feel very privileged to work with the trauma people. So just to get started, okay, there we go. If you don't, pardon me, if you're not familiar with Safe Kids, this is a map of where the presence of Safe Kids is. There's over 500 chapters or coalitions, and then and it is a worldwide organization. So we're under the umbrella of Safe Kids Worldwide, and then here in the state, there's Safe Kids Oklahoma, and that is out of the Children's Center Rehabilitation Hospital in Bethany. So, the coalition that I'm in the coordinator for started in April of 2015, the lead agency being Oklahoma Children's Hospital at OU Health, and then it came under the trauma program at OU Health January of 17. So this is our first year that we are over it, as well as being the lead agency. The mission, as you can read here, protecting children from unintentional injury, and the #1 cause of death for children here in the United States. And so it's just crucial, safety. I noticed that someone had their child buckled up in their car seat for their picture, and that's awesome. And this is just, again, what we're going to go over. And starting out with heat stroke prevention, it's also known as pediatric vehicular heat stroke, PVH, that to date in 2021, unfortunately, there have been 5 children already who have died this year from being left in a car. And we keep working every year to prevent these tragedies. And if you've ever wondered, about children rather than adults, these small bodies, they heat up faster, and they don't cool off like adults either. So they really retain the heat. And one of the main reasons that children are left in a car, unfortunately, if this happens, it's a change in routine. Like if, mom usually takes the child to child care and drops them off, and then there's company in the house or something like that, and dad takes them and might be distracted, excuse me, or vice versa. A change in routine like that. And some people say, well, how could anyone ever forget their child? There's been a lot of research about this, about the distracted brain, and how, have you ever, parked in the parking lot and then go, I don't even remember the drive here, because you're on automatic, and that is your brain, and you're working, you're driving here safely, you're here, but, you've been thinking about other things. It's just really interesting brain research, but that's the reason. And some people think that, it's only the southern states, or it has to be really hot, and that's really not true, because children have died from heat stroke in a car when the ambient temperature outside is as low as 60 degrees. And I like this little graphic. It's looking at the elapsed time, the outside temperature being 90 degrees, and how fast that car heats up. cars heat up 19 degrees in the first 10 minutes. And so as you can see, the heat's coming in the glass, coming through the car, and it gets fast. It gets hot really, really fast. And then here is another graph just showing the same thing, just in 1 hour. You know, the car is 43 degrees higher than the ambient temperature. So that you see that the largest spike is in the first 10 minutes, 19 degrees. So this is crucial, and us as bystanders, if we ever see a child in a car, we really need to act and call 911. If you can open the doors, great. Even if you have to break a window, especially if you see a child in distress. I know in Oklahoma, one thing that makes it a little more challenging for us is some of the cars have really dark tinting, window tinting. So it would be more difficult for us to see a child. But as soon as the fire department would get there, the first thing they're going to do is break the window. Excuse me. Hopefully they try to break it a front window so then they can reach back so they don't, get glass on the child. But there will be no hesitation about breaking the window. It's all about getting the child out. The campaign that the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has come up with in partnership with Safe Kids Worldwide is Park, Look, and Lock. And this is a really, short and sweet for us to remember, and some things to remind us to look each and every time in the back seat of a car is we might put our left shoe there when we're driving, we might put our cell phone, we might put our purse or briefcase, anything that we are not going to get out of the car and get very far without. And that doesn't mean that our shoe or our phone or our purse or our briefcase is more important than our child. It just means with our brain on automatic like that, we just need to, have a reminder. And this is highly recommended, so it's a good thing to do. So I have had two friends who, one was going to a store and then they just started talking and they came back and they were absolutely horrified that they had left their child there. And they just thought if it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. And I know it can happen to anyone. The New York Times a few years ago came out with an article, Fatal Distraction, and I really encourage you to read that if you want to know more about it. And also the gentleman who's doing all the distracted brain research, he's out of the University of Southern Florida, and he is excellent. I can't think of his name right now, though. I apologize. And then someone else, one of my friends, coworkers here actually, they all got into the car and they pulled out. They're driving down the street, and all of a sudden she realized that their son was not there. So they went back. One of them had brought the child out in his car seat and set him on the ground, and they had just left him there. No one had ever snapped him into the infant carrier base. So these are both people that I work with here at OU, and it can happen to anyone. And that's why, I never in judgment, there's no blame. It's just we need to help each other. A good thing to do is to have a plan. Your child goes to child care, always have a plan. If they don't show up, within an hour of the time you usually drop them off, half an hour, whatever you want to make it, make sure that they call and check on the child. And that is a really good plan to have in place. But we have to make a plan. We have to do everything we can to prevent this, because these are preventable injuries. This is where we create reminders. And then take action. We absolutely have to take action. So if I had left my child in the car and I was in the store somewhere, I would want someone to take action to save my child. So we just, again, we're helping each other as a community. Moving
Laura,
on to
I have a quick question. Sorry to interrupt, but now I'm a mom of a 2-year-old, so a lot of these things cross my mind absolutely now more so than um, before, and can absolutely understand things just you get on autopilot. And there has absolutely been times where I dropped him off at daycare heading to work, and it for a brief flash of a second I thought, oh my gosh, is he still in the back of my car? And I forgot like what is going on. So completely understand how this can absolutely happen to anyone. But I also have a question. We look at, we're talking about leaving him in the car and how hot it gets um, when the car is not on. But I know certainly summertime in Oklahoma, even if if you haven't been in the car for a while, it gets really hot inside. And then when you actually go to get in it, how long it takes for it to cool off a lot of times. Or if you don't get a lot of good air circulation in the back seat where the child is, are there concerns there that we need to keep in mind whenever we're first getting in the car and it's having a hard time cool off in the back seat, or if it's having a hard time with air circulation in the back
I
seat?
think the biggest thing to do would be to use a sunshade for the car. If you really get strategic about it, you can park facing the sun wherever it's east or west at the time that you park. Have the sunshade up, so that will help. And then also cover the if they're not in an infant carrier, cover the empty car seat like with a towel, and then that might keep it cooler. I do want to say, unfortunately, this year, because of the 4 tragic deaths in Oklahoma last year in 2020, Oklahoma, our state, our home here, is number 5 in the nation per capita for child deaths from heat stroke in cars. So that is a very, very sad distinction we do not want to have. These are preventable. We need to think about that. The worst injury, the worst death is something that could have been prevented. And so that's why we just keep working, park, look, lock, park, look, lock. And it's also, once a parent has a child, they need to start that habit. The other habit is most children are left by a parent or caregiver, but the second highest reason children get caught in cars and is because they gained access to it on their own, and then we're not able to get out. And we call that entrapment. And, that happened last year in Tulsa to 2 siblings. So, a family didn't lose just one, but lost 2 children. And so that's why we also recommend that once you get out of the car and get everyone out of the car, you lock the car and then put the keys up and away and hopefully out of sight. So you can't, kids think it's, it's small spaces in a car. It's a nice place to play, attractive to children. So we just want that off the, it's not going to happen. And just to say one thing is, if a child is missing, you can't find them, the very first thing to do is always check the trunk of your car. There have been instances where a child was in the trunk and they were looking everywhere. And by the time they thought to look in the trunk, the child had passed away. So the trunk of the car first, swimming pool second. And that's across the board. Always, always, always look in the vehicles first. So, another tragic statistic, about Oklahoma, and we can do better. We were doing better. The pandemic last year did decrease the numbers, thankfully, of children. We say people were traveling less. However, the trauma center saw an increase in car crashes, motor vehicle crashes. So, and which are by and large preventable. The number one thing we can do for that, is watch our speed and, just be really, really careful drivers. So thank you for that question. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So if it's, like I said, really hot outside and either we're in and out of the car or whatever, and I have a little nephew who's 5 months old, he gets real red sometimes. What are some signs that we should look for that he's getting too hot
Well, that is a sign there when he starts getting flushed like that. And it goes back to that babies, children, babies, infants, children, they're heating up faster than we are, and they can't cool off because they don't sweat like we do. So him flushing like that, that is telling you that he needs to be cooled off.
And so are there steps we can take to get them cooled off quickly?
Well, it would be, the best thing would be a fan or the air conditioning, but a fan, I'm talking about a handheld fan.
Right.
And just, really making sure that he isn't getting overheated. And I know how it is because, especially like if you're going swimming and you have fun and you're out there in the water and enjoying it, and you come in and the car is like an oven. I understand that. So if at all possible, hold the child or pass them off to another caregiver, start your car, try to get it cooled down before the child goes in. But yes, they will. And so that is distress when they start getting flushed like that.
Okay.
That's a really good question. Yeah, the heat here is just oppressive. So we have to be more careful. But for us to be number 5 per capita, it's a tough thing to think about. So, so going on to hydration, what I really like about this information is if we've ever wondered, well, how much water should we have, or how much Gatorade, or how much, is enough, what should we do? It's all been figured out by research. So, and I know that like at practices, I know that the football teams are really careful, especially when they have these 2-a-days, which we won't discuss, but, always with our children, send a water bottle. They need to drink water before they go to practice, and then every 15 to 20 minutes. There should be mandatory water breaks, and we don't want to wait until they're saying they're thirsty or anything like that. We have to stay ahead of it to be hydrated. And again, children generating more heat. One of the first things we learn in nursing school, children are not small adults. They're completely different. So pediatrics is different. The children, their metabolism is different. And this really comes into play when we're talking about this. So generating more heat, not being able to sweat like us, and getting flushed and everything, we need to cool them off. But this statistic in the United States, 9,000 high school athletes treated for heat illness. So that is a lot of kids, being treated. And when we think about how much to drink for every 20 minutes of play, this has it down to a teenager, a young person, 10 gulps of water, with a gulp meaning like half an ounce, and a teen, 20 gulps. So, the next slide shows weight. So 5 ounces for an 88-pound child every 20 minutes, 9 ounces for a 132-pound adolescent. So we can kind of use that to either give, know that they need less or know that they need a little bit more. And that's from the American Academy of Pediatrics, so they have it all researched out for us, which I think is amazing. And then athletes are drinking enough if their urine is clear or the color of lemonade. I remember when my son was going off to Boy Scout camp, and that's what they said, you have to pee clear. And of course the little boys were giggling so much, but this is the way. It's an easy way to see and to know that children are getting enough water, and for ourselves too, getting enough water if our urine is clear or color of lemonade. So going on to water safety, this is a slide from Safe Kids Worldwide, and looking at almost 800 children drowning in the U.S. every year. That's way too many. One is too many. And 2/3 of this happens during May and August, so this is the period to be really careful around water because there's more people accessing water. When we look at the different ages of children, the risk does vary by age. So infants less than 1 year old are more likely to drown at home, we found. And what we encourage people to do with infants is have touch supervision. You know, the whole time they're in the bathtub, at home, we never leave them. They're always within our touch, within our reach. We can always grab them. They may try to stand up. They may try to, you know, who knows what children are going to do. They're going to do something. That's what we know for sure. They are going to be moving and they are going to do something. So touch supervision for the littles. 1 to 4, it's more like the children are more likely to drown in a pool, and then 5 to 17-year-olds more likely to drown in natural water. And this is, you know, this is just, it helps us to know the biggest risk. But when we really think about infants and toddlers, I mean, they can drown in the toilet because they're top heavy, and they can, if they, you know, fall over, they can't right themselves. They can drown in very little bath water. So we, you know, a mop bucket, if anybody still uses those kind of things, anything. You know, a bucket of water that we put out for the dogs, you know, if they, you know, get upside down in that, I mean, they can't help themselves. So that's why we got to keep our eyes on them, any water. And this is the big statistic about children ages 0 to 4. More than half the drowning deaths happen then. And I know you all are probably familiar with the death of Bodie Miller, the Olympic skier, and his wife, who was an Olympic volleyball player. And she's in this age group, 0 to 4. And, you know, they turned their back a minute and she was out in the pool, and they didn't find her until it was too late. And when we look at that graph, 1 to 4 more likely to drown in a pool. So it's horrifyingly sad. Loss of life, loss of future, loss to a family. So we can prevent these. That's what we always have to be in the mindset. They're preventable. Let's be on guard. If we have an infant, touch supervision. If we have, you know, 0 to 4, we're looking at every pool, especially, you know, open water, older children. So these misconceptions are really important too, because the first one especially, everyone thinks, oh, you know, if a child's in trouble, I'll know, I'll hear him screaming, whatever. That's not what drowning is. Drowning is silent. And the reason is because when they're having trouble in the water, they have water in their mouth. They're not going to be able to yell for help or scream or anything like that. So drowning is silent, and drowning is sudden, and it's forever. So we have to realize that when we're around our little children and trying to keep them safe. And then this shows about 1/3 of parents who have left their child in a pool for 2 or more minutes, and that is too long. They can drown that fast. So we can't turn our back on them for a minute. And then parents being surveyed, they felt that as long as there was a lifeguard, the lifeguard would be looking out for their child. It's our responsibility as parents to watch the children. And, you know, yes, the lifeguard's looking around and scanning the pool, looking for everybody, but they're not focused on just our children. So we need to be the ones to do that. And then the majority of parents here on the 4th misconception, they thought that if the child could have swimming lessons and knew how to swim, they didn't worry too much about drowning. And the reality of that is that almost half of the people, the children 10 to 17, did have swimming lessons. And so that is not a good indicator of who is safe and who is not safe in the water, which is a real eye-opener to most people. And when we talk, here's open water, when we talk about, remember, the ages are from 5 to 17. Most children child drownings will happen, from that age, will happen in open water. And when we look at open water, we're talking about lakes, we're talking about ponds, rivers, oceans, reservoirs, retention ponds, quarries. And the reason why is dangerous currents, there's sudden drop-offs. You know, it's not like a pool that just has an even floor, limited visibility, the depth of the water they may not be able to determine, and they can't. It's more difficult to judge distances. So there's a lot of reasons about open water, and when we look at the gender, this holds true across trauma patients in every injury. It's always the majority are male. And then when we look at age, we're looking at the 15 and 19-year-olds, half of them, it's open water. And there's also ethnicity. One of the schools I work with, they were telling us about a family, they had gone to the lake, and it was a little third grader had gone in. Well, just like what this says is there was a drop-off. His dad saw him go in. His dad went after him to save him, and they both drowned. So these are real threats, but they are preventable. Most lakes, especially in Oklahoma, do have areas, marked off for swimming, and one of the reasons why that's safer is because they know, that there's no dangerous drop-off. That it's going to be, it'll get deeper as you go in, but it's not going to be a drop-off, and that's why that swimming area is marked off to be the swimming area and not another area. So I think about that family a lot, and the more I work in all this, in water safety and all the injuries, I just see it unfold this way. I mean, these statistics are really important to pay attention to. And so when we talk about survival skills for water, what do we want to teach our children? If swimming lessons are not going to be the fail-safe that we think they are, then what has come about is research-based is these 5 skills. Can your child step or jump into the water over their head and return to the surface? Can they float or tread water for a minute? 1 minute. Are they able to turn around in the water in a full circle and find an exit? And then can they exit by themselves out of the pool? Can they swim 25 yards to an exit? And be able to get out by themselves. So this is something that's really important, and when people ask me about water safety, I bring these things up. Because if a child gets in trouble and they go underwater and, if they can get themselves returning to the surface, if they're able to tread water or float, and swim a distance and be able to exit by themselves, these are the life skills. They're very important for survival in the water. And then tips for parents: install fences around home pools. And Safe Kids Worldwide got behind a letter that most of the coalitions did also sign. And what that was, it was a letter to HGTV, because HGTV, shows these beautiful, home remodels and everything else. Well, often the pool is there and there's no fence around it. And even on some of them, they'll say, well, I don't want to put a fence, it won't look as pretty. That's not what we're here about, safety. It's always safety first. And so they need to have fences 4 feet tall, self-closing, self-latching gates, so they cannot be in the pool area alone and possibly drown. So those are really important. So we all got together and on a letter to HGTV pointing this out. And so I hope that they change, and I hope that they bring that up when they're renovating homes, with a pool or building or flipping or whatever they're going to do. Another thing that's important is emptying a kid's swimming pool after each use, storing them upside down. My kids used to use the jungle gym, had a slide, not the jungle gym, the swing set had a slide, and they would come, we'd put a little kiddie pool under that, so they'd come under the slide, and go into the kiddie pool. They thought that was just the world's greatest, we're talking very young children. And I would always empty that and turn it upside down after every single time. I didn't want another child to wander by, get in, not be able to get out, animal or anything like that. And then know what to do in an emergency. Really know your first aid. Most of us here in the hospital are required to know CPR, which is a wonderful life skill to have and that can save a life. The other thing that I didn't put down here, but if we're at a pool, it is important if you know the address of where you're at, not just the housing addition, for example. There was an instance a few years ago that, the fire department was able to find the neighborhood. They didn't know where the pool was located in the neighborhood. So it's not enough just to say, come to this neighborhood and we're in the pool. Give them an address or across the street an address or whatever's near it. So being aware of our surroundings is always a safety thing. Okay, water safety. This is the Water Watcher tag. If anyone wants one of these, I have some I would love to share. And it's on a lanyard, and people wear this, and that's when they're supervising children and keeping them in sight, and they will not leave the water until someone else comes. And when I'm at health fairs, I also have a big hat, because I think, or Hawaiian shirt, something that's easy for children to see who the water watcher is. And also they know not to bother that person. That person will not be on their phone. We're talking 10 to 15 minute shifts, and then someone else is wearing the hat and has the lanyard, But we want someone that children can easily spot and know that's, not to bother them right then, and this person, is on duty for their safety. So, Lindsay, if you can help me with that if anyone wants these, I'm happy to share. They're a great safety thing. And lastly, we're going to talk about sun safety. I didn't know this until I started researching this, that the first thing I want to bring up is tanning beds. I did not know this, but Australia has absolutely outlawed tanning beds. There's no tanning beds in Australia. And the reason that is because if someone has been in a tanning bed before they're 18, they have a much higher chance of developing skin cancer later in life. And, it is a myth when people say, well, I'm going to go, to a sunny area for a vacation and I want to kind of get a base layer tan to protect my skin, and that is just a fallacy. So we really need to discourage people from tanning beds, anyone. And when the states that are highlighted were the top 5 states for skin cancer in the United States, and I found out that just recently this was redone, and the #1 state in our country now is New Hampshire, which I'm not sure why in New Hampshire. They are not at a high elevation like, a mountain state or anything like that. I don't know why, but New Hampshire is #1 in skin cancer right now. So there is a big financial burden. The derm clinic across the street for us at OU is very busy, and we need to really be careful. If we see something we should go every year for a scan. If we see something that's questionable on our skin, have them take a look at it. Almost all the time it'll be okay, but if it's not, early intervention for what's going to help. And so that, to preserve our life. So I can't stress that enough. But sun safety is always in season, even when during the winter we are walking. Let's say we park our car, we go into one store, come out, pump gas, come out if we're not underneath a shade, go into another store, running errands, whatever. All that's cumulative. That's what we need to think about, how much time in the sun. Well, it was 5 minutes here, but it was 5 minutes to come back. It was another 5 minutes, and it was another 5 minutes coming back, and it all adds up. So sunscreen, and more sunscreen. We don't put sunscreen on children, on babies, infants under 6 months, but after 6 months, the key phrase we want to look for is broad spectrum. because that protects us from both the UVA and UVB rays, sun rays. And then it is recommended that we use sunscreen. SPF stands for sun protection factor. Sunscreen with an SPF of 30 or higher. And also, we have to remember to protect our eyes. The eyes are one of the locations that melanoma is often found in, believe it or not. So sunglasses are very, very important. And I wanted to show you this. When at the SPF, if we start at 30, then we're protected from 96.6% of the UV light. 50, 98, and if we have an SPF of 100 on our sunscreen, 99%. Sunscreen that is kept in the beach bag, in the car, or whatever is not going to work. It needs to be applied. It needs to be reapplied at least every 2 hours. If it comes off, you know, if someone put a towel around them or whatever, it comes off, reapply, reapply, reapply. It will not work if it's not used. But we're lucky that we have this. Again, another preventable injury. So, but I thought this was so interesting because we never know, you know, what does SPF mean? And you know, how much should we start at? At least 30. Go to 100, you have even more protection. But still, it's not 100%. We need to be safe. So hat, sunglasses, sunscreen, the shade, they're all very important. And so that's my presentation. Safe Kids, our Oklahoma City Metro Coalition, we all need to be proud. It's right here, you know, the lead agency, the Oklahoma Children's Center, OU Health. So does anyone have any more questions? Or any other topics you'd like to see addressed?
I think these were all great reminders, especially there with, you know, making sure you go and get your skin checked, even like just screenings, like even if you don't really think you have a concern of anything, but just going ahead and get screened. I know probably over the past 12 months or more, a lot of us had just kind of put those regular screenings on hold, just because we weren't sure with the pandemic, kind of what that might look like. So really encourage you guys, if you got out of that routine of those screenings or haven't started that routine yet, to look into that. And yes, there's a lot of great dermatologists around the state, and of course here on the Health Science Center campus, we have a dermatology clinic, absolutely. So yeah, those are great things to make sure, and great reminders we start looking into.
I have plenty of lanyards, so just get with Lindsay and I'll bring them over to her office, or we can figure out where you work and we can drop them off. They're nice to have.
Absolutely. Laura, thank you so much. Yes, if you guys have questions, please feel free to stick around. Otherwise, have a great afternoon and hope you can join us next time.
Yeah, thank you so much.